What got your interest in joining the Marine Corps?
To go in the Corps. Two actors, Pat O'Brien, Jimmy Cagney. Both of them played a lot of Marines, tough sergeants, and I just liked the Marine Corps. I liked the uniform. We were all honest by saying, you got to admit, it was the uniform that really interested us.
It still is.
So we paid a heavy price. A heavy price. We went into boot camp. The first thing we heard there by a bunch of kids that had already went through, "You'll be sorry." Yeah, but I love the Corps. We fought good. We were Americans. This is one thing that the Corps appreciated when we went in to sign up. Why are you signing up on the Marine Corps? You realize that we're the first to fight? We said, yes, sir. Well, why do you want to come in the Marine Corps? Because I know they fight, and we want to fight the enemy. We want to fight Japanese. That's just the way we felt.
Was that?
See, we learned that. We learned that in school also.
A lot of patriotism back then.
Yes. And the movies went to war. Yep. Hollywood was good in those days. It's a bunch of trash now. Trash.
What was the media like?
Media?
Yeah, the news. Were they very...
I think, in all fairness, I have never experienced anything in my life until now, these past years. The last of what I was used to was with Donald Trump. I haven't seen it since. Breaks my heart.
Yeah.
I love my country. People are distorted. Their minds are all goofed up. They don't know what to do. And that's because the schools are to blame. With our high school kids today, I'll be very honest and frank, and I know what I'm talking about because I've spoken high schools. Can you imagine a high school, a school dropout, going to a college or university and talking to students? The Baptist Theological Seminary I went and spoke to twice in Dallas. And they know that I did not finish school. Why? What's the difference? What happened? I think that we learned something that was deep-rooted with our country that they don't get today. No. And Hollywood is not making good, wholesome movies about our country. We learned a lot of history from Hollywood. A lot of history. We learned all about Ford, how he started out. Our electricity, everything. The first mirror in an operating room, Thomas Edison put a mirror up, and it deflected the light directly right on the wound where they were working.
Yeah.
But it was done by reflection. He thought of that. We saw all of the Thomas Edison movies, very educated. Alexander Graham Bell, the electricity. How that Wabash, Indiana, is the place where they lit the first lights. That town is still there, and those lamps are still there in the streets.
Really?
My son had a home there for a couple of years, and I went there quite a few times.
Did Americans get along back then?
I think that we got along good with because, we had parades. We had parades all the time, and I thank my dad for doing it, but, young boys forget. And when the flags would come by in the parade, we'd be sitting down. Get up on your feet, the flag is coming. Now, can you imagine my father spending more loyalty to the flag than he did his family? But that's what he was. That's what he was trained. He was a Marine. So we would stand in our home. When Roosevelt spoke, we stood up in our home.
Wow.
That's the way it was.
Some different times. A lot of respect.
We had parades. Do you know that all the car industry, the big factories in Detroit, do you know that the 4th of July, they all had company picnics and families, members and families that worked there were invited to the picnic. Everybody went there. The parks were jammed full all over the city of Detroit. They paid for everything. That's gone. There's nothing like that anymore. After the war, it ended. It stopped. So that lost a real relationship, a touch there. There was a bond there.
Yeah.
We've lost that. Boy Scouts. I was a Boy Scout. I speak to Boy Scouts. Up at Roanoke, they had Boy Scouts there. It was a patriotic day, and I spoke. And they were standing around with their hands in their pocket. One kid had his shirt tail hanging out. And I said to the scoutmaster, "Is the scoutmaster there?" And he raised his hand. "Would you mind bringing the boys up to the front?" And he said, "Sure." And he got them all together. They all came up the front. They thought they were going to be recognized. And I said, "Would you boys turn around and face the audience?" And they turned around and faced the audience. And I said, "Young men, do you realize that you are the future of America? Do you realize that maybe someday you will have to take our place when it comes to battle? Look at you now. You got your hands in your pocket, your shirt's hanging out. Look at your socks. Straighten up. Get in good shape there. And do you help people cross the street? We did. If you saw a woman with bags of groceries and wraps, would you help her, or would you let her go walk right by you? I mean, and the scoutmaster stayed on the other side looking at me, and he shook his head with agreement. That's what we got. That was just recent. We got a problem, and the school is to blame for it.
Yeah, I don't
The
disagree with you
school
there.
had more of us than our own mothers, and they didn't use it. And they're not using it today, and we're losing good teachers because they're not going to teach that junk. Trash. Has nothing to do with our country. And another thing is, one thing we have to learn. I speak to a lot of our young men that have lost their arms and legs. They can never say they had victory. They can never say they won the battle. It's still going on. They've been doing it for 2,000 years, for crying out loud. They've been fighting Israel. It's not going to stop. That's all they know. We had no business going in there. And we sent our boys in there because, we're America. We're going to help the world. The world doesn't help us. We're on our own.
Yeah.
So you ask a question like that, and I reach way out that far ahead.
Well, I appreciate the fact that
But
you do.
we've got to look at this. We need to know we've got to realize what's happening. We've got to get back to being a patriotic country. We've got to protect our nation. We've got to see that gate slam shut on the border. Run those that are standing there, run them back over on the Mexican side. Shut that gate up and lock it up forever.
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen.
I think so too.
It's going to happen real quick.
I think you're right.
That may sound like harsh words, but I love this country. We better start. I was in France, Normandy. We spent some time in Normandy, 3 veterans. We were invited there for a big celebration. One of the first things I saw when we drove into the yard of a home where they were going to keep us for 4 or 5 days. I saw the American flag flying right next to a French flag. And I saw it everywhere, all over that part of France. Schools, buildings, American and French flags together. And I didn't know that. I never really liked the French. I didn't like the way they fought. I didn't like the way they stood back when things were happening. I just never liked it. I had a lesson to learn. Those people loved their country. They went through battle hell. They have memorials, and they're not going to erase them. I was told that they've got memorials. They have stains on walls where they had firing squads during the First World War. I never liked that. Well, let me tell you something. If anyone goes to France and goes to Normandy and goes a few miles out of Normandy, they will see a little church chapel that is over 100 years old on a river side. It is called the Church of the Blood-Stained Pews. We didn't know what that meant, so we were invited in. It's a history. St. Patty was in it.
Really?
He went there. And we couldn't understand what this blood stain was. So she took us on a tour and showed us the benches. There are blood all over the benches, stained dry from the Second World War. The Germans took that town over. And they fought from inside of that chapel. And we beat them and drove them out of town, but our boys got hit. And they set a hospital up inside the church, but hadn't done it. They couldn't quite get it all done. And the boys were sitting in the pews waiting to be taken care of, and there was blood all over the place. It's still there.